Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with The Terror, Season 1, Episode 6, review. Alright, so I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was good, don't get me wrong, but there were some things in here that I just, wasn't my favorite, to be honest, but I'm really still loving this show. I did my Let's Talk Television episode a week ago, about why I think this is the best new series on cable television, and I still feel that way. I still feel that it's a really, really good series. I do think a negative to it, though, is that they have made this available on AMC Premiere, so most of the stuff that I see about the show is people commenting about the finale and everything because they've already watched it. I mean, in this, day and age, a lot of people are into those shows that just come out one night, they watch it all in, 2 days, and then that's it, right? So, to me personally, I still like weekly shows. I love weekly shows. I like it a lot better than just watching a show in 2 days. I don't know, I just appreciate it a lot more that way as well. But yeah, so anyways, I'm still sticking with it week to week. That's how I'm going to be doing it for the channel as well, right? For week to week reviews. And I've seen some reviews that for, the whole series, already, right? Because, some people have watched it. And of course, people are going to go online and find a stream or, download the episode, whatever. That's just, again, day and age, that's just what people do, right? Unfortunate, but that is what people do. So even people without AMC Premiere are still, able to see the show. But anyways, yeah, so this episode, I felt like it was a little imbalanced in the fact that the first half of the episode or the first 3/4 of it were okay. I mean, yeah, we saw things that we wanted to see pretty much, but that last bit was insane. I mean, like, that was just a crazy, crazy scene or crazy sequence there. So I just feel like they could have made that a little bit longer maybe, or kind of spaced a little bit of it out, because throughout the beginning here, they kind of showed us snippets, right, of all this stuff kind of leading, and then they had that big event at the end of the episode there, and I honestly am still not totally sure about that event and why, what's happening. So anyways, maybe, if you notice something that I didn't, of course, please comment. If you agree with what, I'm saying here, or disagree, all that, I'd love to discuss, this show and any show, with people who comment. So really, really appreciate that. And yeah, and let me know what you thought of the episode as well, for sure. So, and I really like to thank you guys for the support on this series so far. The reviews have been doing awesome, and I'm really loving the show. So, for sure, gonna keep up with these every single week. Tuesdays is the goal, but yeah. So, anyways, and I'm having a lot of shows now. I mean, I think I have 4 or 5 now that I'm wanting to do a week. So, this is gonna be one, of course, that's gonna stay. But I think I gotta make a decision on 1 or 2 of them, just to kind of get some time back. But anyways, I love doing the reviews for the show, and I'm really loving the show. So, this one. So first, of course, just go through a quick recap in this one, not too long, and then get to my rating, favorite character, and some more overall thoughts of the episode. So, start off with this one. We're January 1848. We're 2 weeks later after the last episode. I do like that they do this because I'm not a huge fan of each episode being so far apart, but they do this where they show us the date and how long it's been so that we understand the circumstances. So I appreciate that. If they didn't do that, yeah, I would definitely say that's a problem. But they do that, right? They give us the time frame, they give us the time period of, how much time has passed, and in some episodes, I mean, that's really important, right? Like, this episode, not so much, 2 weeks, it's not much, but in the past, I mean, it was like 8 months later, right, the next episode, so yeah, I mean, that's just, pretty crazy, especially if you don't know that, right, and you're kind of trying to piece things together. But anyways, so the high-ranking men are having this meeting to talk about the food supply, right, what's remaining, and what to do with rationing it, setting, the amounts, right? How much they're gonna give each man, sorry, and how the men are gonna react to it, right? So, and then Fitzjames, he says in the scene, he says, "When is the point of no return?" So that's like the ultimate question, right? And then the lieutenant says, "Midway into next year." So they don't have that long, right? I mean, it's January now, right? So I guess midway into next year. I'm guessing like next June, or maybe he went midway into this year. I don't exactly know. But obviously it's not that long that they have left. And I think 2 episodes ago we saw the flashback of Sir John, and they in that scene he was told how long they would, or sorry, he told someone else that how long they had. I think it was 5 years with proper rationing, and I think they've been there now. I think 2 and a bit. I don't think it's quite been 3 years. So yeah, I mean, not a lot of time left, but they do have a little bit of time. So Fitzjames says that they haven't seen the monster in a while. He figures that they killed it. Obviously, we see in this episode that they haven't. They haven't really even harmed it, it looks like. But the monsters kind of left them alone for now, which I don't know if I'm a big fan of that. I like that storyline, and they were really, really pushing it the last 3 episodes, right? The monster's kind of introduced there when he kills Sir John. That's like his, the big thing there. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that, obviously. Going forward here, we're going to see they're really, really foreshadowing that the mind is going, the darkness of the mind and stuff in this scene as well. The rations, they keep talking about the food, so there's a lot of stuff foreshadowing here, what's going to happen. So I think that they're going to go away from that whole storyline with the Toonbach, the monster, or like the hybrid polar bear, some people are calling him. So yeah, I think they're going away from that, which honestly I really like that storyline, but it is what it is, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they are going to stick with that in a couple episodes. Who knows, right? So then he also declines reducing the rations to 3/4, as the crew will notice and get worried. So he's worried about them, finding that out and then suddenly being worried, maybe not doing their job and all that stuff, right? So definitely, understandable. So he decides that he's going to do 4/5. It's like, okay, I mean, that's not that much smaller than 3/4, but anyways, whatever, Fitzjames. So then he tells them that they will talk again in a month's time. So he's kind of pushing things off in a way, I guess, a month, whatever. And then he says we must preserve all things portable. And this was in the little teaser from last week that they showed us for this episode. And I just thought this scene kind of showed that Fitzjames taking on that role of being a leader, right, of the expedition. I thought it really was apparent in this one, where he's kind of, ordering and he's making decisions like that, moving to 4/5 instead of 3/4, stuff like that. So that was really good to see there. And it looks like he's doing well, right? It looks like he, is not folding under pressure, right? He's staying and he's doing pretty good. So, and obviously we must preserve all things portable. That's kind of a big line. Of course, that's implying that they're going to be, walking. They're going to need food on the go. And that's exactly what the plan is now. So then we see Fitzjames and Blanky. Blanky stayed after this little meeting here. I thought this scene was okay, but there was kind of a main takeaway from it that you could have kind of seduced in about, or not seduced, sorry, seduced, yeah, you could have taken out literally about 30 seconds of this whole conversation, and that's pretty much the only meaningful part. The rest of it was, it was interesting, but for our story it wasn't that important. So anyway, they just talk about Blanky's past expedition, something that he was on, and yeah, so the takeaway was basically that Blanky says it's not the hunger or the cold, it's what happens in the mind, right? He says there's a darkness that can take over. So, ultimately, that's what they need to worry about, especially on this expedition, too, right? That's what they need to worry about. And Fitzjames says, do you see this type of darkness among us here, right? Wondering, does he see that? And he says, I don't need to see it to know it's here. So, I mean, yeah, that's just really saying, he knows that it's apparent, he knows that it's going to happen. He doesn't have to see it playing out right now, but he knows that, over time and, if things keep going the way they are, he's going to see it and it's going to happen, right? It's kind of inevitable is pretty much what he's saying. And then he tells Fitzjames that he needs to give something back to the men to keep their minds busy, kind of occupied, so that this doesn't happen, or at least they can slow down this process of that darkness kind of taking over. So, and that's, of course, exactly what Fitzjames does in this episode. Then after that scene, of course, we see Francis. So we still see him, recovering from this, from his alcohol withdrawal sort of thing, right? Going through a tough time right now. And of course, last episode we kind of left off on that, right? So it's been 2 weeks now, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later when I get to more of my overall thoughts of the episode. But I kind of had a problem with this, right? within 2 weeks, that he kind of was able to come back, to this carnival. And at the carnival, he seemed pretty much fine. I mean, he really didn't seem that affected. But in the bed there, he's like barely, surviving almost, or that's at least how he makes it out to be. So I just think there's a little bit of an inconsistency there. So yeah, he's still not ready to come on deck again, of course. He's still going through that. And there was an interesting scene there with Jobson. I think it's Jobson or Jotson. I don't know, one of the two. But I'm going to go Jobson. And yeah, so they were just having a nice little conversation there, and Jobson was telling him that he did this before with his mom, stuff like that. So again, not really a big takeaway there, but an interesting conversation, kind of like that Blanky and Fitzjames scene there. And then we see Lady Silence. This was very interesting. She's kind of surviving out in her igloo there, kind of struggling to survive though, I think, right? She's having some troubles, and then we see her that she's performing some sort of ritual to call the monster for help, right? She's kind of like spreading out this meat around her in a circle. She's got this fire there, so obviously, it's something, right? And it does end up attracting the monster a little bit later. So she's still sitting there and singing, I guess. That was what she was doing there. And the monster then finally comes to her, right? He actually shows up, and is standing there, and then she starts to cut out her tongue, and she didn't seem like she wanted to do it. So I really don't, maybe the monster was like talking to her or something, telling her to do it. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, or maybe she knows because her father had done the same thing. Committed himself to the monster or something, or the spirit, right? So I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but she starts to cut out her own tongue. And then later, of course, we see that she did it, right? So pretty crazy stuff there. And again, we're not done with that yet. So then we see the men setting up things for this big carnival, right? And this is the thing that's giving them, something back, right? Like Blanky said to Fitzjames. So Fitzjames then talks to the lieutenant, says the situation is inescapable. So, he's kind of given up on it finally now, as Francis had, a long time ago, even when Sir John was still with them. And he says that Francis was right the whole time, but they were deaf to him. So, that's a pretty big thing that he says that, right? He finally accepts that Francis was right. Sir John did not make the right decision here. And instead, Francis was actually right the whole time. So that was a pretty big admittance right there, kind of manning up and admitting that. So, and that also shows that Fitzjames has changed a lot too. I mean, 3 episodes ago, I don't think he would have admitted something like that, right? So, that relationship between them is also kind of, building, kind of developing, in a different way as well. So anyways, so then he says we need to give the men a last hurrah before they start walking. So, very interesting there. Obviously, he has this idea in his head that, he's going to tell them that they have to walk, right? They have to walk out of this. There's no escape, right, on the ships. And that's what he says. It's an inescapable situation, right? So, yeah, really, really, interesting lines there. But again, I mean, in that whole scene, that's pretty much all you get out of it. I just found like there was a lot of scenes in this episode that were like that. No really big, conversations and stuff like that. That kind of brought on, more stuff. So then we see that Mr. Collins. So this was very interesting, and I thought this played exactly into the part where Blanky and Fitzjames are talking about the darkness and their minds going, not crazy, but the getting like bad ideas, pretty much, right? Getting dark ideas. And I thought this played into it exactly, right, Mr. Collins. So he says that his mind is ill, right? He's not ill, but his mind is. And he's experiencing these feelings, right? Really like bad feelings, right? And he feels completely alone on the ship, right? And in this scene, I mean, this just really made me mad, to be honest, that the doctor is just totally unsympathetic, right? He just doesn't recognize it at all, doesn't really care. I mean, he asks him if his gut hurts, right? And he just ignores the mind issue. He's like, oh, well, your gut doesn't hurt, you're fine, right? You know what I mean? And Mr. Collins is, I mean, this probably takes a lot to just go to the doctor and even admit this, right, at this time. And the doctor just kind of shuts him down, right? And it doesn't really care. So, obviously, that's not going to help Mr. Collins. And then the doctor said, look forward to the party. A little fun is what's needed. And you can see Mr. Collins just kind of enraged. I mean, he's like, fun, right? And he's like questioning him, and obviously, and we see he's troubled. I mean, at this point, or at least he looks like it, right? And in my opinion, I don't think he's the only man that feels this way either. I think he's probably the only man that came clean with it, right? That came to the doctor and asked him. And of course, he gets shut down. So, you kind of understand why maybe he might be the only man to kind of come out and admit that. So, anyways, definitely, I don't think he's alone. I definitely think there's other men that feel the same way as him. But he is quite troubled at this time, and he's experiencing some weird things, and I don't doubt that he's going to be the last to feel that way. So definitely interesting there. So then a little bit later, the men find the monkey who has been testing the canned food. Someone pointed that out to me in I think it was 2 episodes ago. Or no, last episode, I think. Last episode, at the very end there, we saw... No, was it last episode? I don't know. It was one of the last 2 episodes where Good Sir was having the monkey come over and eat the canned food. And that was to test the food for this disease that he thinks, was apparent, right? That was there. And so, of course, we see basically the aftermath of this, the results, because we see the monkey testing the food a little bit earlier in the episode, and then all of a sudden it's like going berserk in this room, right? Something has happened here. So, that whole thing plays out. Mr. Goodsir comes to check it out, and then a little bit later, he pulls out the monkey's teeth there, and the gums are just the same as as that man with the same disease from the lead poisoning, right? So he's putting things together, right? And he's finally realizing that these cans, and maybe all the cans, right, are contaminated and giving them lead poisoning. So very, very bad. And then he goes to talk to the doctor about it, the unsympathetic doctor from before. Now he goes to him in this scene, and this even pissed me off even more. So he goes to the doctor. He says this entire journey is a constant ingestion of lead over years, right? And obviously, very bad, right? I mean, that's, you can die from that, and the monkey did die, presumably. From it, and we also saw that other man die. So he says so he says it could explain David's death from episode 1, and then he also says the other men as well. So very interesting, right? Maybe that's why David died, because of this lead poisoning, this disease. So very, very interesting stuff here that Good Sir is actually figured out now, right? He's finally figured it out. And he says this is going to get worse and worse. We need to let command know immediately, right? He knows that this is a bad disease. He knows that it can, without telling people that the cans are going to lead to lead poisoning, I mean, people are just going to keep eating from them, right? So the doctor says he will think on it, and he says it's his decision to make, not Good Sir's, right? And it's like, why would you be objecting to this? And Good Sir even says, I mean, think on it. Like, what do you need to think about, right? So the doctor... however, he says, I need to think about it. So, anyways, obviously another kind of, bad or aggravating decision here made by the doctor. Kind of blows off Good Sir here, as he did Mr. Collins. So, anyways, Good Sir finally getting to the bottom of this with doing some testing with the poor monkey. But yeah, so very interesting there. At least he didn't test on a man, right? Except, he used the monkey, okay, right? A monkey's dead, but at least it's it's not a man on the cruise. So then the men are at the carnival. So this was the big ending scene, or the sequence that took up that whole last, I would say, like last 5 to 7 minutes of the episode. And this is kind of where all the action happened, right? So the carnival's going on, right? They're all having a good time, and Jobson is leading Francis there to see it. So Francis decides that he wants to try, he wants to take the walk to the tents there, to the carnival, and see it, right? Even though he's, really sick right now. And this is what I'm saying. I mean, right when he kind of walked into the tent, he seemed pretty fine. I mean, he really didn't seem affected like he did before, just presumably a day before in bed, and it seemed like he was, barely surviving. So I just felt like I was a little inconsistent there. So I thought that was kind of an accomplishment, right? That he made it to the carnival. And I think he thinks that too. So the event looks pretty elaborate, right? A lot of work put into it. And I mean, Francis even says, like, how the hell did they do this? Or something like that, right? He can't believe it. But, that's what they wanted to do. Fitzjames planned this whole carnival. And, and that's what the men wanted. So they put a lot of work into it. So Fitzjames actually defends the carnival then when Francis arrives. Francis thinks it's kind of gotten out of hand at this point. Some guy like spills his drink on him, and a lot of the men are drunk and everything. So he thinks that's kind of got out of hand at this point. So he's kind of mad at Fitzjames, and Fitzjames tells him it's to get the men ready to walk out, right? So he's made that decision, and he's told Francis now. Francis agrees too. I don't think Francis objects to this idea at all. I think that Francis would have proposed it at this point too, maybe even earlier than Fitzjames. So yeah, so they're kind of in agreement there. So he tells them what the real reason is for the carnival, not just to get drunk and have fun. I mean, yes, yes it is. But it's also, to give the men something before they have to walk out, right? So Francis says the men have a right to know. They have a right to know about this walkout. So he's going to tell them. So they gather around him, and he gets up. He stands on that, little pedestal there. And again, like in this scene, he really does not look affected at all. He seems like his normal self at this point. And like I said, again, I mean, just the day before, he was presumably in bed, barely surviving, it looks like. So that's just me. Anyway, so they gather around, and Francis says, frozen ships are good shelters, but they are not our homes. We've got homes we need to find our way back to, right? So, obviously, I mean, I think the men have kind of forgotten that at this point, so he's kind of reminding them, he's like, this, these ships are not our homes, right? Like, I mean, we have something to get back to, even though they've been there so long. Maybe some men do think, that the ships are their homes now. But obviously, they have to get back eventually, right? They obviously can't last too long out there. So Francis continues his speech a little bit, but suddenly then we see Lady Silence comes in, and she's, bleeding a lot, from cutting her tongue out, right? And then she passes out from the pain in one of the tents. So we see that she's kind of struggling with it right now. Again, what made her make that decision to cut out her own tongue? Because she obviously doesn't look like she's happy with the decision. So maybe the monster, the spirit, made her do it. I don't know, against her will, right? I don't know. But that's very interesting there. And Francis then tells the men they will be abandoning both ships and walking out, and it will be an 800-mile journey. That is insane. Like, anyways, but I mean, it's better than just sitting there on the frozen ships and then eventually starving to death. Because that's pretty much their only other option, right? So, yeah, 800-mile journey they have to take to walk out and walk. He said something about walking to the port, right? And he said by then, once we reach that after 800 miles, the team that we sent out before will come back as well, and they'll have supplies, everything. So everything will be good, right? As long as they make it there, they will survive and they'll be able to get back, So that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. And the speech kind of goes on. He says some other stuff about, that people are going to be there to help them and all that stuff, kind of, reassuring the men, that this walk is kind of worth it. And then we see the doctor. So the doctor from before is pouring gasoline. I think it was the doctor. So I'm really confused here. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I was a little bit confused by this scene of which characters were doing what. But anyway, so we see the doctor, he's one of the doctors, pouring gasoline on the tent and clothing during the speech, right? And then we see Lady Silence as well. So during the speech, there's like, crazy, like it's just everything's happening at once here. Everything's going down. So we see Lady Silence suddenly runs into the tent, right? And obviously, alarms everyone with her tongue cut out and all this blood on her as well. So then the doctor sets the tents ablaze, right? He lights the match and he throws it down where he set up all the gas. And honestly, okay, so I think this decision of killing himself, one, and also trying to burn the whole crew and everything involved, I think it's because he thought from Good Sir, what Good Sir told him there. I think that he thought, oh well, it's too late, we're all gonna die from this lead poisoning disease, I have to burn it so it doesn't spread. And then he kills himself because, he killed all these people. I think that's what it is. Honestly, I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure that we'll get some answers going into the next episode. But that's the reason I think. Again, if I missed something, please let me know. But that right now is kind of my idea of why he would do such a thing, because it's crazy, right? So the tents are ablaze, the fire is spreading now, and then he walks in to the main tent where all the men are, and he sets himself on fire. This was an epic, kind of scene here, though, honestly. Like, kind of a sad moment, right, where he pours gasoline on himself and then lights himself on fire. But then when he's like walking towards the men on fire, like that was just a really, really cool kind of image, right, a visual, right. That was just kind of cool to me. And I don't really like the Doctor anyways at this point, so seeing him die and seeing him do all this stuff, I mean, I don't think you really feel for him. But anyway, so they put him out, but his face is pretty much burnt right off. He's not going to survive, right? He's already dead. Or, even if he wasn't, I mean, he would be in so much pain. But anyway, so he's dead, right? So they put him out, but he's already dead. And the men then are trapped inside with the fire surrounding them, and chaos ensues, right? They all start running in different directions and trying to get out of these tents that are on fire. And then, yes, and so then some of them are trying to get out, and they're actually trapped in. So the Doctor made it so that all the men were trapped in this main tent, and they couldn't really get out because of the fire, right? So obviously we get the idea. He didn't want any of them to survive. He wanted to kill everyone. And what is that accomplishing? Probably going to stop this disease from spreading, right? So I don't know, but in the scene with Good Sir, he kind of seems like he doesn't buy it, like he doesn't think it's serious, right? So why the change in Heart here, where all of a sudden he thinks it's serious, and then he has to burn all the men to keep it, at bay? So I'm not exactly sure. Again, I think we'll get some answers going forward. So we see that Hickey is on the other side of the tent. I forget exactly why he went out. I think he was just taking a piss or something like that. Like, I don't know exactly why he was out there, but he was. So he's outside, away from the other men, and he uses this to his advantage. I will say that episode 5, last episode, he also helped them, in breaking through that little barrier to get up onto the deck. And in this episode, he breaks through the tent wall there and helps the men. So just like to point that out. So he's on the other side of the tent trying to free up space for the men to get through. He's throwing crates, right? And this scene, I mean, is also kind of interesting because at one point you're like, oh, Hickey's going, full out. He's trying to save everyone. He cares about everyone, right? Because you're kind of starting to think, or at least I am, that he's going to be kind of a bad guy, right? He's kind of an evil kind of guy. But, at one point here, well, he's saving everyone, right? So he's a good guy, I guess. But then you see what happens. So he's trying to get out the tent. So he decides he has to cut through it, right, for the men to get through, because he can't untie the tent so that they can come through. So he has to cut it, right? So he ends up driving his knife through the tent, through a man's chest, as he won't move back, right? Hickey's saying, move back, right? I can't get through the tent unless you guys move back, unless I'm going to stab you, right? And so he does it anyways. He just puts his knife through and cuts open a slot, right? So the men can get through, but he also kills a man in the process. Now, I think this is Dr. Petty. I think it is. I'm not exactly sure. So this guy's obviously different than the guy who lit himself on fire. But either way, they're both doctors, which is a big deal. But anyways, I may be wrong there. Again, please let me know. But yeah, so he just slices this guy in the chest and cuts into him, killing him. And he actually drops down, and then all the other men kind of trample over him to get out. So, I mean, that was a big scene. And you see Hickey's face. Like, he doesn't really feel remorseful about it either. So, yeah, very interesting going forward. So then the men run to the exit, right? Most of them get out, I would say. Very few, died or are burned, at least, except for the two doctors, like I mentioned. So a lot of them got out, they were able to get out, and thanks to Hickey, right? Without him, I don't know what would have happened. So yeah, big props to him. And then they find out that they lost Dr. Petty, right? So they're kind of talking about this. Francis and Good Sir is talking about this a little bit after the accident, right? The fire. So the fire's put out. This is the next morning, and they find out that they lost Dr. Petty. And I think this is the one who Hickey stabbed and killed. Of course, at the time, no one knew. No one even knew that the guy was stabbed and killed, I don't think. So I'm not sure if they're going to find that out. We'll have to see. But honestly, I don't see any of them getting mad at Hickey for that. I mean, he literally saved all of them by doing it. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And my thought was, in this scene, Good Sir may have to serve as the doctor now, right? Because he may be the only one that's left. because these two doctors were both stabbed, or sorry, not both stabbed, but they both died in this accident, right? I think so. Yeah, I think that's what's happening here. So that was kind of interesting, a little bit of dialogue there. So again, we'll have to see going forward. Is Good Sir going to be the only doctor now? Did one of them survive? Who knows? But, and I'm not exactly sure how many doctors they started out with either. But anyways, so then the crew witnessed the first sunset come up, and that was the end of the episode. So, a lot of grim stuff here, people dying, this huge fire, the darkness kind of taking over. But then towards the end of the episode there, we kind of saw the sun, come up, and it was a little bit sort of a light, positive vibe you got there, and that was interesting. So anyways, then that is the end of the episode. That'll just about do it for the recap, and I'll get to my, rating, favorite character, and some more overall thoughts. Alright, so in terms of a rating for this episode, I'm going to give it a 4.6 out of 5. Again, like I said at the beginning, I just felt like it was very unbalanced. All the action kind of happened in the last 5 to 7 minutes, and the other scenes in the beginning of the episode were kind of either little glimpses of what was going to happen in the end, or, just kind of throwaway scenes with maybe a significant thing or two, right? I just feel like they kind of... like, maybe they should have dragged out that last scene, or at least, built it up a little bit more, in terms of, show what the doctor's motive is for, setting the place on fire. And again, maybe they might show us that next episode. So, that's obviously, it doesn't make sense that they're going to do that next episode. But yeah, I just felt like it was a little unbalanced, and I felt like they could have fixed that a little bit. Because throughout the episode, I was, I don't know, I wasn't bored, but I just felt like it was kind of down, it was kind of calm, nothing was really happening. The monkey thing happened, so that was kind of, okay. But then we get that last 5-7 minutes, and it's like, whoa, like all this stuff just happened, all at once. So anyways, and I mean, that's a good thing too, but I just felt like it would have been a little bit better if it was spaced out, maybe built up a little bit more, instead of all of it just, been thrown at us right at the end. It created a lot of questions, right? That, what's going to happen with the disease? Why did the doctor set the fire? What's going to be aftermath of Hickey stabbing the guy? And maybe will they find out? Maybe will they even care? Right, and obviously, is Francis going to come back now after what he looks like in this episode? So a lot of questions to be answered here, and they got four episodes left to answer them. So I have no doubt of that. But yeah. So anyways, I hope next episode we get a little bit of this explained. Or maybe I'm just missing something and it was explained in this episode. It's possible, but I don't think so. So anyways, and again, visiting that Francis issue that I had, I just thought like it was a little bit too quick in the fact that it was only 2 weeks, right? And all of a sudden now it looks like in this episode, at least at the carnival, that Francis is pretty much back to his normal self. I just think it's a little bit, unrealistic. I just felt like it was a little bit rushed. Although, we have to see Francis, right? But honestly, I would be okay if we saw yet another episode even of him still recovering and trying to get to that level where he can come back. But I just felt like they pushed it a little bit too fast. But, maybe next episode he might still be in that bed recovering, and we'll have to see, right? But for now, it just looks like it happened a little quickly. And that would be, one of the only negatives of this episode, to be honest. But yeah, so I enjoyed it. Not as good as last episode. I really, really enjoyed last episode with the monster and all that. So that was really awesome. But this episode was kind of a down one a little bit until that end, of course, right? Favorite character for this one is going to be Good Sir, right? Or Dr. Good Sir, I guess. I love how someone referred to him as Dr. Good Sir, and the doctor in this one said it's Mr. Good Sir. So he's like telling him, he's like, I'm the doctor. Good Sir's not a doctor. But anyways, he's played by Paul Reddy. I think he's doing a great job. And Good Sir is kind of a mysterious character still. Like I said, I think in last week's review, I think there's something about Good Sir that is not exactly on the surface right now. That's gonna, be playing out here. Whether he's connected to Lady Silence somehow or connected to the spirits, who knows, right? But I think there's something under the surface here that we're not seeing yet that, Good Sir is going to play a role in. So we'll have to see where they take that character. Obviously, he came up pretty big here with coming up with this idea and finally, proving that this disease is spreading and the lead poisoning and all that. So really great stuff here, and going to be interesting to see going forward, where they take that character. and again, like I said, what he becomes, right? What they reveal about him. So I do think that there's something that we don't know yet that they're gonna add here. And like I said, Paul Reddy's doing a really great job. I don't know anything else that he's in, but yeah, he's really doing a great job. I think this is kind of like his biggest thing so far that he's done. And yeah, he's doing awesome. So, anyways, guys, that'll just about do it for the review for this episode 6. Like I said, we have 4 more episodes. Really looking forward to the rest of the season here. And please please keep coming back for reviews each week. Of course, I'll be continuing them. But anyways, thank you so much for watching this review. Thank you so much for the recent support on the channel. Really, really appreciate it. We've reached 100 subscribers now, so I'm really, really appreciative of that. And yeah, so anyways, again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week for The Terror Season 1, Episode 7.